I'll say this about Mr. Pankaj Rai, that through our interactions with him and getting to know him, what has really struck us is his down-to-earth nature, his friendliness, his humility. And that resonates very strongly with the feelings that run through Sir Lavelle Academy. We talk about leadership with vision, understanding, courage and humility. And we have believed for quite some time that any leadership which is to be sustained, meaningfully sustained over a period of time, must have humility very firmly embedded in it. And Mr. Pankaj Rai is the very epitome of that. So here he is, our keynote speaker, and it's a lot of respect and a lot of looking forward to. We would request him, but what is the plan now? Do we request Mr. Pankaj Rai to come up now, or there is something? Okay, so I think the children are better at this than I am. So I'll just welcome once again on behalf of all of us, Pankaj. You will definitely remain a part of the SBA family, and may you continue to smile that wonderful smile of yours for many, many years to come, Pankaj. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, sir. I now request our CFO, Mrs. Vani Pratap, to give our keynote speaker, Mr. Pankaj Rai, a token of her appreciation. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. I request our keynote speaker for the day, Mr. Pankaj Rai, to come and address the gathering.
It's so nice to be back in school, and I have been in the field of data science and data analytics, and some of you students might also be seeing these terminologies being used a lot. So in our field, the way we kind of talk to people or tell a story is, there are three elements to it. There's data, that you look at the data, generate some insights out of that data, and then you take some action. Very simple, you observe something, you derive some insight, and then you take action. So my talk today will be exactly in the same format, which represents my field. The data in this case will be my own life story, because that is the only data that I can be sure of that I have observed. Although, people from the outside may have observed the same data differently, but I'll share with you the perspective that I have about my own data, which is my story. I try to generate sort of two different insights, which were generated earlier on, largely for my own daughter. So I talk about those two insights, which are some kind of, you can say, leadership lessons or life lessons or professional lessons. And in the end, the action will be, we'll talk about that, right? So let's begin with the fun part, which is the story. Because the stories are always nice, and so I was born on the day Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. So that's an easy date to remember all the time. In fact, that was 21st of July 69. Thanks to that, my grandfather named me Apollo. Apollo was, by the way, the name of the craft. So in my young days, all my friends know me as Apollo. So my early days were in a factory town in Gorakhpur. My dad used to work in a factory. He also had a very interesting background, and it's important to bring that up because many a time what we don't realize is how much our parents' lives has shaped ours. Sometimes when you reflect back and you realize how much of them is there in us in different ways. So his life was very interesting. He was born in a very small village in Uttar Pradesh near Banaras. I saw a Banaras school. He looks at Varanasi as his hometown. And he was like those super 30 kids, if you have seen the movie, who had no major background, but somehow made it big in the education field. So he went to IIT Bombay, knowing one language, Bhojpuri. So he learned Hindi and English while in Bombay. So that has, on the other hand, was a city-bred child. She sort of went to hostels, boarding school like yours. So very, very different background. In those days, they didn't have an option to choose their spouse. The parents decided somehow that these two are meant for each other. At the age of 20, they were married off. At the age of 23, I was born. Right? So now my older daughter is 24, and she's amazed at how can people get married at 20 and have a child at 23 when she's 24 and not even thinking about marriage. So anyway, back to my story. So from Gorakhpur, Fertilizer Colony Township, where I was, my father told me and my younger brother, who was 2 years younger to me, at a very young age, that both of you are going to IIT, and we had no clue what IIT was. And he also told us to go to IIT, you have to be very good in science and maths. And I make sure that you do it well. So we were those two kids who were always in the evening, father came home, teach us maths. We were supposed to get always 100 in maths, because he would say, boss, I never had 1 mark cut, how did you get 99? So that was the upbringing that we went through. Then we went to Delhi. Dad got promoted, as you know, when you get promoted, you go to a large city in a larger road. So in Delhi, I was put in another nice public school like some of you belong to. It's called Model School, Barakamba Road. Now that school is normally not necessarily known for academic excellence, to put it mildly. And later on, I did ask my dad, and some people asked me that, if your dad was so keen to send you to IIT, why did he put you in modern? So the answer was that in his IIT Bombay class, there were a lot of good modern school kids who spoke good English. So he had this fascination that this school is very good in English, and my son should not suffer the fate I did, and he should learn English. So I was sent to modern school to learn English, basically. Anyway, so Dad was very sure about what he wanted to do in life, and I have still not been sure of what I want to do in my life, but most of my life has been driven based on what my dad wanted, and you'll see the story unfold. So clearly, he had his way, and he was also very conscious that there are risks in getting into engineering, so he made me take biology also, and made me sit for all the exams, whether it was engineering or this thing. Just in case if I didn't make it to engineering, I should make it to this thing, and you would make sure you leave it at the place you are taking exam, and make sure that we take the exam, because I bunked my pre-board biology exam, so you can make out how I did not like biology as much, but he made sure that I took the exam. I actually got admission to Maulana Azad Medical College also, because if you can memorize and regurgitate, I think you can clear any exam in our country. So anyway, so I made it to IIT, and then I didn't want to take the AIMS exam, but he forced me to that. I have given the fees, you got to take the exam. I didn't make it there. Long story short, after my engineering, what people used to do, and by the way, I never came first in school or class, so I was never a head boy or any of these things. I was always somewhere below. Not too far below, otherwise I would have made it to IIT, but nowhere in the headlines of any place. Right? So in the 4th year, people start applying to universities abroad. And those universities ask you to write an SOP, Statement of Purpose. I am told that they ask you to write that even for your undergrad these days. So I started writing an SOP. That was the first time I was asked to think for myself. Before that, my dad was doing all the thinking. And I was just complying, and I didn't know any better. So after my second SOP, I realized that I had no interest in electrical engineering, and therefore doing a master's in electrical engineering would have been quite painful. So I said, this doesn't seem to be the right thing to do. So what do you do next? So at that point in time, the other option available was you do an MBA, and you wipe out your engineering and add a different degree, which was far more or far less deterministic than science was. In MBA they will say it depends. So I like that, because science was very black and white, and if you didn't know, you got 0. In MBA, if you didn't know, you can still score marks if you can sort of make a good argument out of it. So I thought this seems like a better place where I can at least get away with it and not always be given 0 or 1. Now, I got only one admission when you read my CV and when people talk about me as Shantanu did, it all appears very hunky-dory and impressive that this guy must be like great shakes. So I'm just giving you some tidbits on how things happen. So I got just one admission on Ahmedabad. The reason was these MBA schools ask you to do a group discussion. So you 10 people sitting and you have to talk. So while my father had made sure that I learned English in one school, I don't think he could make sure that I can speak when 9 other people are also speaking. So I kept quiet in all GAs. Ahmedabad said everyone gets 2 minutes to speak. So my suspicion is that the only admission I got there was because speaking marks I could score only in one place, all others must have gotten 0. So anyway, so I got there, so no option. Again, in these schools, what happens is at the end of it, there is a placement season. So your companies come, they select you. Till day 3, 4, mostly people get placed. So day 3, I have not gotten placed. So day 4 was like, now nothing is going. So I got 2 job offers. One was to sell light bulbs for Wipro. Wipro is a company in Bangalore which also sells, I don't know whether they still do, but they used to sell light bulbs. And the other company was a company called Feedback Ventures, which would do what is called management consulting. We had not heard this term much before because consulting back in the day was not very well known. So I asked my friend that I have got these 2 offers, what should I do? They said, boss, you can hardly speak properly, you can't sell anything. So forget this Wipro back light bulb selling, no one will buy light bulbs from you. You better take that management consulting thing. This seems like something new. Looks like you have to sit in some AC room, make some PowerPoint presentations and talk to senior people. That is the MBA thing to do, that sounds better. So that's how the decision got taken. By that time my father had given up. He said, my job was to get you to IIT, my job is done, now you go figure out, I don't care what you do. So now my friends were advising me. So they said, you take this feedback. I went there and indeed the job was like that. You do research, you make nice PowerPoints, you talk to CEO, you tell them what they should be doing. At the end of 2 years, I realized that I had no experience of myself. I'm just talking to people and giving some vicarious yarn to people on what they should do without necessarily having my own conviction on whether that is right or wrong. So at that point in time, there was a friend of mine who was working in ICICI. ICICI used to be a project finance company. He said, Pankaj, this company is very good. We give money to people. And when you give money, you learn a lot. Because if you are giving project finance loan and all that, you learn a lot. So I said, yeah, that sounds like giving free advice and giving money, second one appears better. So I got interviewed by them. The guy who interviewed by the way, Sandeep Bakshi, now the MD of the company, he stayed there forever in his life. So Mr. Bakshi told me that Pankaj, you are coming from consulting. In consulting, you can give any advice and walk out and no one cares. Here, when we give money, we make 2 rupees on a good loan, we lose 100 on a bad loan. So it's a 50:1 this thing. So remember, don't give loan like you gave advice. Think about it. So I said, okay, that's a very valuable lesson. I still remember that lesson from Mr. Bakshi. So I stayed in ICICI 4 years. Great learning. A lot of companies will come, they will ask us for money, we will go raise projects, talk to, so understood a lot about the business sector, how it works, how businesses function, how people set up new policies, all of that. And then I was going to get married to my now wife. In fact, the marriage decision back in the day was still like that. I was asked to meet my wife Ritu over a talk, and then asked, is there anything wrong in her? I said no. Then you get married. I think they were asked the same question of her. She probably also said nothing wrong in him. She couldn't find out anything wrong in that 2-hour meeting that we had. So we got married. So nowadays people talk about getting married, and we said, for us the criteria was, you met them, you didn't find anything wrong with that meeting, then you get married. What else is there to do? So life was quite simple. Like I'm saying, engineering doctor, you took an engineering decision because you didn't like doctor. Marriage, you didn't find anything wrong, you get married. So I got married 27 years and counting. 2 daughters and counting, not counting daughters, but yes. So since things have worked out. So when I got married, she was not working. So my friend said, boss, this ICICI doesn't pay too well. Now you're going to get married. So there is a time where you stop learning and start earning. Because you have to take care of your family, you will have kids and all of that. So ICICI wasn't a big pay master, good learning but not much. So those days people would go and work for multinational companies because they would pay double the money for same work. So that's what I did. I went and interviewed with a company called G Capital. G is a General Electric company. They had a capital business. Some friends were there. They called me over. They got me interviewed. I got a job. So I think the other trend that you will see is that if you have a good degree and good pedigree, IT, IIM, modern, whatever, normally people will think that you must be smart till you prove that you are not smart. So if you keep quiet and don't say too much, I think you will get away with most of the things. And if you don't, then sometimes you have to prove yourself why you are smart. So I think when people ask me that, what's the value of a big college or a big degree? I say generally people assume you are smart because that college seal is on top of it. So if you get a good college, please take it. That does help and that brand does help. So anyway, I went to G. G was a great company, by the way. I didn't stop learning. I learned a lot of things about being in a large multinational company, how things work. The term leadership was introduced to me by that company. In fact, GE was considered to be a leadership factory, which I didn't understand then. But later on I realized how that company trained people in so many other softer aspects, which is what leadership is all about, which I learned without necessarily knowing it. So GE was great. And then after that, this whole offshoring industry was coming up in India. We had liberalized ourselves, lots of foreign companies were coming. So someone from GE had gone to set up a Standard Chartered Bank's offshore center, and I briefly went and worked for Standard Chartered Bank in Singapore, setting up their offshore center. And then I came to Bangalore about 18 years ago. The same person said, now I am leading Dell. You come to Dell, which is a computer company, and I spent 11 years in a computer company. So from a geography perspective, 25 years in Delhi, year and a half in Singapore, and now last 18 years in Bangalore. So in Dell, someone said, we want to do data analytics. And I said, yeah, this analytics sounds good, and I'll do it. So I did that. Then some people from Dell had moved to Wells Fargo, and they said, why don't you come here? So I joined Wells Fargo, did some remote thing. My current job with the Aditya Birla Group data science team, this is 2 years old. Again, there was a friend of mine who was going away, and he said, I set up a team and come here, so I came over here. So I think in my career also, if you notice, the initial impetus was given by my father, who was taking all the decisions up to my marriage. And then my friends were telling me what I should do, and I was just agreeing with them. So when people talk about database decision making, how do you make career, I said, I didn't do much. I followed my father's advice at first, and then my wife's and my friend's advice later in life. I didn't take many decisions on my own, and life seems to have worked out. So sometimes I think that database decision making, which I preach to others, is overrated. Sometimes gut feel is good enough. It has worked for me. So that is one sort of strand of my life. I think the other piece is that when I came to Bangalore, I got interested in running marathons and so on, and I do marathon running and so on. I got into cycling in these areas. So Bangalore is a great place for outdoor activities. I play badminton. So my personal side, I am very much into sports and fitness and so on and so forth. On my personal family side, like I said, 2 daughters. The other one, Pragya, both of them went to school called National Public School. They both took economics as a major in their college. So the other one went to Christ College. She works for a company called Epsilon. Over here, the younger one went to Kriya University, which is in Telangana. She's in her final year. So the girls have also taken up whatever they felt like. There also my father had an undue influence on my daughters, because when they were trying to choose their career, I said, you do whatever you feel like. To me, what I did was whatever my father said. So I said, you also talk to my father, which is your grandfather. So my elder daughter talked to my father, and he convinced her that smart students have to take science. So my daughter was interested in taking arts or commerce. So my father, he's a very convincing guy. He convinced me also. So he convinced my older daughter that, when you take science, you have all the options, and you should take science. And since she was not interested either in engineering or medicine, economics was a compromise choice, because economics also is a science subject, so to say. So Pragya took quote unquote from my dad's eye science, but economics, and now she's working in something totally different, campaign management. The younger one was smarter. The younger ones are always smarter. They learn from their older siblings' mistakes. In my case, my younger brother did not take biology, so he took only half the exam, and he straight went to IIT. In this case, the younger one, Pariti, she said, I'll go to economics through the commerce route. Why do I have to study physics, chemistry? So she did that. So in all these cases, the younger ones are smarter. So if you are a younger kid, you can always learn from your older ones. So that has been the story of my life. So this is all the data about, so that you understand. And this may be the story of your parents, because I'm closer to your parents' generation, and you may have heard such stories from your older generation. Now the question is, what is the insight from all of this? So this question came to me 5 years ago when my older one, Pragya, was going to college, and my wife said that, you keep giving a lot of gyan to everyone around. Now your daughter is going to college, please tell her what she should do. Now, giving advice at home is always fraught with danger, because that is recorded and can be repaid at different points in time with different effects. So I said, I'm not going to immediately give any advice, because then you call me, I come here, I give a talk, I don't have to remember what I told you, you will forget me and all that. But at home, that recording stays forever. So I said, what I will do is, let me think about and reflect on my life experiences and come up with some insight and some framework which I can share with her. And I thought it's a good reflection for me to say, what all have I learned and what all can I share which will be relevant for the future? Because fast learning is not always relevant for the future. So my idea was, I'll derive a framework. Framework because I'm an MBA. MBA people are supposed to create frameworks. When you do an MBA, they tell you 4P framework, 7S framework, all of that. So I said, I'll do. Now, but because I'm an engineer, the framework has to be derived from first principle. It can't be just, I said 4P and you agree with it. So I said, let me use the economic principle of supply and demand to derive the framework on what are some of the things that will be in short supply and high demand. Everyone understand that simple principle that if something is in short supply and high demand, and if you possess that quantity, you should be better off. So I said, what are some of those characteristics in this world that I have seen from the past which will be in short supply and high demand? So for that, you have to look at the past, try to make some projections, and look at that. So the first trend that I saw in my lifetime was this trend that is generally called as globalization. And you may not see it, but some of us who have lived that life, we have seen globalization play out, that lots of companies have come in, free trade has happened, global GDP has grown, our company has grown at 8 to 9% GDP growth rate, it used to grow at the Hindu rate of growth at 2-3%. So globalization has been very good for the world. Everyone has grown, China has grown, India has grown, everyone has grown. So globalization has been the main theme of my generation last 30 years, which has created a lot of wealth. Because the economic principle says that if everyone focuses on what they are good at and trade with each other, both of them benefit. It's a win-win situation. So that win-win has created a lot of trillion-dollar companies. If you have an Apple phone, you are contributing to that trillion-dollar company, Apple or Facebook or whoever. It has also created a lot of billionaires. You see all these lists of Fortune 500 and all of that billionaires. So a lot of trillion-dollar companies, a lot of billionaires have been created. I think what has also happened, which is that a lot of people have not benefited from this. So inequality globally has grown. So in these 30 years, if you were to look at data, there are still a lot more people living under $2 a day. In fact, in COVID, that number has only increased. So there's an index called the Gini coefficient, which measures the inequality in the society. That has grown like crazy. So while we see the benefits of it, there are this. So therefore, my first sort of projection, which I think is already playing out, I had made this projection 5 years ago, that this is not sustainable. This inequality will have a social backlash, and the populist politicians will take up to say, you know what, this is not good, this whole globalization, free trade is hurting all. We will close borders, we will put tariffs. We'll look about ourselves first, we'll look about others later. So instead of looking about the maximize the growth, maximize yourself, your country, your company. So I think the general trend which I observe around us is that everyone is looking inward, looking at themselves. So that's what is happening. But what does the world really need? So some of you, when you look at the broad global problems, two global problems that come with climate change and terrorism. They happen to us all the time. You see all these floods, climate activities, you see terrorism, whether it is Hamas or Israel or wherever. These two are big global problems. And both of these problems require collaboration. You can't solve these problems in isolation. You have to collaborate. You can't do it yourself. You look at the private sector, you look at the Amazon or anyone, all of them are becoming big through collaboration. They have suppliers, they have ecosystem care, all that. So I think my view is that the world actually needs more collaboration, whether to solve private sector or public sector problem. But on the supply side, everyone is looking inward. So the first C, so this is the 5C framework that I talk about. In my opinion, the first C, which is in short supply and will be in high demand in future, will be compassion. And compassion to me is really thinking about everyone and thinking about the long term. Compassion is that. Compassion is the opposite of selfishness, if I can say. So you're just thinking about yourself, which is what everyone seems to be doing because that's the easy thing to do. But I believe that if you are a socialist, you don't need me to tell you anything. But even if you are a capitalist, I will tell you that compassion will be in short supply. And therefore, as a good hedge fund manager will tell you, accumulate compassion. It will be helping you in good stead in future. So that's the first C that I see is missing. And those who are able to acquire a much larger, longer term view, to me that is what compassion is all about. You will have a long runway, you will have a bigger impact than if you were to just think about yourself in the short term. So that's number one. I think the second C arises from the scarcity era in which I grew up. And I gave you examples of what scarcity means and what kind of mental model the scarcity era forces on us. So when we were growing up, not just in careers, where doctor and engineer were the two choices, even in toothpaste, Forehands and Colgate, even in cars, Ambassador and Fiat, scooters, Vespa and Lambretta, you go category by category, there were probably two choices. One of them either you didn't like or there was a long waiting list and you got the other one and you were very, very grateful that you got a watch or a car or a degree or whatever. So you were quite happy with that. Now, and therefore, I think the mental model was spot the trend which is there and if you can catch the trend, you'll be good. So my father spotted the right trend that engineer will do good, catch it, become an engineer, doesn't matter what you're good at, what you like, become an engineer, it will be good, right? Today what is happening is all of you have hundreds and thousands of options and choices, right? So if you were to apply the same philosophy which was created in the scarcity era, that you spot a trend, you can't, because there is no trend. So you can make anything out of it. I mean, you look at the startups, they are just following what they think is right. They are not spotting a trend, they are just looking at an opportunity taking it. So my theory is that in future, all opportunity will be existing. It is almost like we are in an era of abundance versus scarcity. So in an abundance era, there is no trend. You can create your own trend by joining the dots the way you like it to be. So the second C to me is conviction, meaning believe in yourself. And that belief will come from looking inward and not looking outward. So instead of trend spotting, which is what the scarcity era has taught us, and we are all still trend spotting, people call me and say, what is working well? Is it data science? Should I tell my son to do that? I said, forget it. Understand what is he or she good at. That is what you have to do. So I think instead of trend spotting, you can do trend setting based on your own conviction, based on your own strengths, and that can come through experimentation of what you are good at. Just like you do in sports. You try 5 sports, you are good at 1 or 2, you follow that. Same in your career. Try everything. Figure out what you are good at, and that what you are good at can continue to change and allow that to lead your life versus someone telling you what is the trend. Because there is no right trend. Everything is available, it's for you to pick that up. So that's the second C, which is conviction, belief in yourself, which should drive you versus the trend that is out there. The third trend that I saw in my lifetime was this whole world was very linear. Very linear. So there was this company called Toyota, which became very famous and very successful by following what the term was continuous improvement. So they came up with this, philosophy of continuous improvement, Six Sigma. I was a Six Sigma guy once upon a time. I would tell people, you know what, if you make small improvements on a daily basis, you can win. Look at Toyota. They have this culture that the workers will come, they will do a daily morning huddle, they'll make a small improvement. And if the Ford and General Motors people are not doing that, they'll be left behind. So I think the continuous improvement, which was the basis was, world is linear, you make improvement, you'll run faster. And then Tesla came along and said, you don't need an IC engine in a car, you can run on batteries. So I think the third C to me is creativity, which is that the world has become multidimensional. If you have to look at continuous this thing, it is a continuous reinvention versus a continuous improvement, which means it's a multidimensional world. So you can't be just thinking linearly, you have to think much more broadly. So I think this third C also is in short supply because it's easy to think incrementally. It's very hard to think out of the box multidimensionally on that. So I think what happened was I shared this initially, this 3C framework with my wife and my daughter that you gave me an assignment. Here's the 3C. And I derived it, compassion. Because if you are compassionate, you will figure out your own conviction, what is your ticket to play. And if you are doing that, you will hopefully be creative. So you be the 3C. And then, obviously, I am a persuasive speaker, so they liked it and they said, okay, job done, check, okay. But as a good father, 2 years later, I checked with my daughter, do you remember that? And she said no. And that always happens. You tell your children something and after a while they forget, they don't take their parents very seriously. So I said, maybe this model has something missing. It's not hitting the mark because she's forgotten. So I said, let me add 2 more C's to it and make it a more of a circular framework. So I said, life has to begin with the first C, curiosity. Because if you have no curiosity, nothing will begin. So curiosity should lead to compassion, which means understanding the broader picture, figuring out what's happening. That compassion should lead to your own conviction, your own area where you want to play. And that conviction leading to your creativity. And the creative output should go to communication. Talk to people. If you are a product manager, launch the product. If you have created something, share with someone. That creativity, when communicated, will give rise to curiosity back again. So to me, this 5C became complete as a circular framework to say curiosity, leading to compassion, conviction, creativity, communication, and back to curiosity. So it's like more like a circular framework, which I thought sounds right. And then I started sharing this with my friends and colleagues and others. They said, yeah, Pankaj, this looks quite nice. This resonates with us, and we can also think about it and see if we can, apply it to our life and all that. So one homework for you will be to look at this narrative that I shared with you, this 5C framework, debate among yourself, what does it mean to you? Or develop your own framework based on your own observation. Because at the end of the day, it's all about what is it that you have learned and how do you apply it in your life. So that's one framework. The second one, again, happened in Christ College where my daughter was studying. And I think they had heard that this girl's father runs marathon and all. So they were very intrigued by this old man running marathon. They said, okay, why don't we call your father to give a talk on health and fitness? So they arranged, TEDx talk and all of that about health and fitness. So it was a 17-minute talk, but I will do it in 3 minutes because TED is supposed to be 17 minutes. But this is a health and fitness framework that I came up with. See, what I do is when someone asks me to deliver something, I try to create a framework so that I can remember myself. Otherwise, I'll forget it. And I don't like to create PowerPoint. So it has to be intuitive and remember. So my health and fitness framework is really H and 3 E's, EEE. So I think the fundamental thing about health and fitness, the H is all about heredity. All of us inherit something which we don't know. And it's very important to know that. So if I have diabetes or something else running in my family, I should be conscious, I should not eat sugar and all that. In my case, there isn't anything hereditary, so I'm not so worried, but there are people who have some heredity. So one needs to know, one needs to be conscious, and avoid things which nature has already given you. But the other 3 E's, I think it is all in our control, and that we have to experiment and figure out what works for us. And the 3 E's are really eating, exercising, and expression. And when I say expression, it's all about your thinking, your thought process, your way of thinking. Now, on all these 3, I'll share with you my own experiments and what I have done, and then everyone can do their own experiment and figure out. So, eating, I think I realized that as you grow older, your metabolism is slow, so you don't have to eat the same amount. So I eat less, and I am very conscious of my weight because I run a marathon. During the COVID time, I gained 5-6 kgs. I was very worried, so I lost my weight and all that. So be conscious of what you eat, how you eat, and through experimentation you will figure out what works for you. For me, I think eat whatever you feel like, but in limited quantity works for me. So I don't worry about what I'm eating, but I want to make sure that I don't eat too much. So I love sweets, so I'll go to a buffet, I'll have a starter and just sweets. I'll forget the main course. That's my hack, right? So you can figure out what does eating mean to you. You guys are all going up, so maybe you don't have to worry about this. But think about eating as an important thing. Exercising. For me, getting up in the morning on a daily basis and doing something. And for me, it is a social activity. There's a bunch of friends. If I don't go, someone will call me and say, why are you open up? So it just puts some pressure on making that thing more regular. So I'm into running or cycling or something on a daily basis. So again, you figure out what works for you. Maybe it's basketball, cricket, whatever. But some kind of physical activity is always good. And it makes your mind good. It makes a social circle beyond your normal work. So that's the second part. Expression is always the hard one. How do you think? How do you keep uncluttered? So my thought process on that has been JOMO. You guys have all heard of FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm in the JOMO mode, which is joy of missing out. I don't need to know anything. So my general thinking about food and information is that we need to be on a diet. Because both food and information have become redundant. If you eat too much food, you become obese. If you get too much information, you suffer mental illness. So my view is that, at least for me, I control my food so that I don't become obese, and I just don't, focus on a lot of information. I don't watch TV. I hardly read books. I just don't serve the web. Very little information to be consumed as and when needed. So you have to figure out your own hack on what is it that you are consuming, because there's so much out there. You can go crazy looking at Instagram, and I'm on Instagram as well. I'm on all the social media, but I choose to control it in a way I would. Otherwise, social media and others will just amplify whatever your things are, and so you will figure out. So I think that's my sort of hack on that. So the 2 framework that you can consider in your discussion and debate will be the 5C framework that I spoke about, and this H and 3E framework that I spoke about. The first one is more related to how to think about life and career. The second one is more about your personal health. I'll leave you with sort of 2 thoughts from 2 other senior people that I recently heard in some other context and who had something to say. So one was Mr. Ajit Doval. He's the National Security Advisor, very learned man. So he had come for an offsite. So we have annual Aditya Birla offsite award ceremony and all of that. We had it last year in Jaipur. So Mr. Doval was there. So he was asked in the end of a very nice speech that what advice do you want to give folks in the audience? So he said, you have to be like a camel. Now, none of us had heard about a camel. We all heard about a tiger or some other animal, but the camel was a new one. So what does the camel do? So he said the camel is very sure of where he's going. He doesn't look back. He keeps going forward, and if the caravan has to come, the caravan will form behind him. So he's saying, basically, in some senses, he was saying, form your own conviction, walk the path that you need to walk. Don't worry so much about who's following you. So that was one thought that I thought I'll give you, because that resonates with all that I said, that she said also. And the last one is from Shah Rukh Khan. It basically says that all this is okay, but जहाँ सिमरन जी ले अपनी जिंदगी। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Thank you, sir. I now invite Mr. Pankaj Rai to declare the conference officially open.